How you doing, Mehri?
Oh, good. How are you?
Good. This is Mehri Davis, artist, therapist, teacher, co-worker, one of my favorite people on earth who works with me here at Goodwill in the Goodwill Art Studio and Gallery. And I am Debbie Griffin. I'm the manager here. I'm also an artist. We're here to talk about Mehri's work and some of our mutual experiences working with the dynamic and beautiful population of individuals with disabilities. So, Mehri, would you tell us how you got involved in this? Because your background initially was in therapy. Is that correct? But you got into working. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so it's actually a really funny story. I fell into this population completely by accident. When I was 14, I really wanted to go to Colorado, and there was a thing that, like a volunteer program that was set up, and they had called and said, "Hey, you can't go because it's full. But there's one other site in Colorado if you want to go. It's a summer camp." And I was like, "Great, I love summer camp, love kids, you know." And then I didn't read any of the paperwork because I'm me. And I saw the day before I left that it was a camp for people with disabilities. And I'll never forget, I was 14 years old and I arrived and we had this like quick meeting. And then they said, "Go ahead and go down to the cabins. You guys can put your stuff away." And I walked over and I saw, it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It was a basketball game. Right. But the basketball game was all these kids with disabilities. So there's like 3 kids over here who are super into it. And they're, they've got sweatbands on, they're dribbling, and then there's a kid just spinning around in circles in the middle of the court. And I was like, okay. And then there's a kid over here with a staff who's just like playing some game that has nothing to do with basketball. There's 5 or 6 people cheering them on. And then there's a kid over here who seems to be like having some sort of issue, who's upset, who's with a staff, and the staff is just kind of making this kid laugh. And I'm like, this is the most interesting basketball game I've ever seen in my life. And I remember thinking at 14 years old, I was like, I'm home. Like, these are the people that I was born to be around, always. And since then, I truly, in almost every situation, have preferred to be around people with developmental disabilities than people without.
And why do you think that is?
Well, I think especially as an artist, the more that I sort of learned about the art world and all of that, the more I really felt like I didn't belong there. It seemed to have something missing. And then when I started making art with people with disabilities, the more I did that, the more I really saw this like just raw, beautiful creativity and honesty just about everything, like you walk into your normal workplace and your hair's a mess. Maybe one person is like, "Hey, you all right? Your hair's a little messy." You walk into this art studio and there's 5 people who are like, "Mehri, what's wrong with your hair today?" And I love that. I love that honesty. And
then then we all laugh.
And then we all laugh. And
then we make fun of you.
Yeah. And then I'm like, wait. But I love that. I love I've really, I just get more and more pulled toward that, especially with sort of the way that imagery in our society has come up. Like, imagery is everywhere now. It's on screens. You're bombarded by it. And I think that a lot of that just like human spirit doesn't translate anymore when you see images. But with this artwork and these people, it always does for me. And I think that's why I'm so drawn to it.
So can you show us one of your pieces that you think that you've done recently since you've been working at Goodwill?
Yeah. So since I've been working at Goodwill, Debbie actually got me really into stitching on my artwork. So this is a piece that I did maybe like 2 months ago. And so all of that's hand stitched. This is all hand stitched. And my artwork has changed a ton since I started here at this studio with you, Debbie. And I think a lot of that is about being around artists who are just doing really different things. And I used to direct a studio. I founded Art Outside the Lines, and it was awesome. But because I was sort of the lead artist there, a lot of the artwork that was coming out of there was rooted in the things that I have always made artwork with. So it was a lot of mixed media. It was a lot of these types of things that I do now, but I wasn't being introduced to new mediums there because I was the lead artist, and there weren't, most of my artists at that studio were adults with disabilities, but they were very young. So their style wasn't, a lot of them didn't have like a solid style yet, weren't using a lot of crazy different techniques. But here, one of the things I really love about the Goodwill Art Studio is most of these artists are older and have a really developed craft. And then also the staff artists, Debbie's influence, like Debbie, your influence on my work with sewing has just been amazing. That's, I think, one of the biggest things I've gotten from here is just being around creative minds all the time who are always doing new things.
Yeah, I always
really
kind of describe the studio as kind of a place where just ideas are continually percolating and kind of moving around like waves. And it's impossible not to be influenced by that. And I think I've been at Goodwill for 15 years now. And I'm still constantly amazed at all the crazy direction. Well, really interesting directions that you don't know where you're going to end up. And that's including the staff I work with. We all seem to have a very huge amount of curiosity and a huge drive to experiment and find new things. So we're not very static, and and that's what makes the place pretty dynamic. And I think, I've seen your work change just in the short time. I mean, really, it's only been a year, and I've seen your work change quite a bit. And that's, I mean, I love seeing that. My work has changed. My work has changed from working with you. My outlook on life has changed working with you. You bring a lot of joy to the studio, a lot of humor. And one of the things that you've also done is that you've brought in other ways of creating that the three of us, there's two other artists that work with us as staff, but you've brought in the sewing aspect. You've brought in a looser way of approaching things that I really, I feel like we've really needed that. More spontaneous, kind of loose, like with the sewing and the paper dolls. And I think that one of the things that makes this kind of job sometimes not the kind of job, something that's not for everybody as far as an artist, is that you really, I mean, it's a lot of sharing of yourself. And it's a lot of sharing of yourself. And personally, I find that pretty cool when I see something that I love going out and then, going into different directions, like in your work with you're doing stitching and Helen doing stitching and things like that. So I want to go back to that piece that you showed up. Could you show us another piece?
Yeah. So this is one that I'm sort of finished with, possibly flirting with doing more too. And if you look close, so that's all hand stitched. And these are things that in my work has always looked like this. It's never looked like this.
Yeah.
And so mixing the clean with the chaos has been something that I've really, really started to focus on since I started at this studio, because I think one of the really major things when working with artists with developmental disabilities and other barriers is it is mixing the clean with the chaos, because a lot of it is very chaotic because, we've got people who come and it's like, okay, draw one person and they're going to fill their page with like 45 people, right? Or, we have people who just go for it so quickly. And I think our job and their job as artists is to sort of look at it and say, okay, what clean is on here and what chaos is on here, and how can we merge them together to make them a little bit more peaceful?
Yeah.
And nice, nice to look at and all that.
Yeah, I think one of our jobs is to help people realize how to tell the story they want to tell. So if it is a story of chaos, how do we help them make it translate into something visual? And that's where we can bring some of our expertise. If they want to tell a clear story and or a narrative or a landscape, that's where we can tell them, well, this, that cloud not being defined is not helping.
Right.
It's distracting. your work has a lot of narrative to it, along with abstract. Could you show us one of your pieces that has a little bit of narrative to it?
Yeah, definitely. This one does. So a lot of this for me was about how voices and stories change as they come out of people, and how it sort of all ends up the same at the end, when you look at a piece like this or when you're making a piece like this. But a lot of the stitching in my work has come to represent sort of flow of thought and my brain and sort of how quickly my brain bounces. So like if you look at a lot of this up here, it's sort of a lot of those stitches there. Like that's about the way that my brain interacts with things, and the way that stories and distractions and thoughts and all these things change as they come out of us. But how they're really all still very, very connected to what our original thought was and who we are.
So you're using a variety of different kinds of paper in there. Could you tell us what paper you're using?
Yeah, there's, crazy amounts of different kinds. So like these are from, like, that's like graph notebook paper. This is tracing paper. There's painted paper down here. And then, but I've really enjoyed playing with paper since I started sewing, because the difference is when you do, when you take something like this and you try to glue it all down, the glue doesn't, the glue flattens it. And I think it really takes away the texture that really contributes to the story. So this is, it's tons of different paper. It's tons of different layers. And I think that a lot of it, even the ones that don't have big like narrative in them that's super clear, a lot of it just is really I guess it's like the fight that I have with my brain as somebody, like an adult with ADHD. It moves so fast. And that's another reason why I love the studio, because the studio moves so fast. There's someone asking for something here. Someone wants to show you something. Ideas are just running. And that's beautiful. But the thing that's tough about it is to take those and make that clear and make it clean and calm so that somebody can interact with it. And for me, layering different kinds of papers and being able to sew them on instead of gluing them flat gives, you've got texture now, and it's a different texture than when it's just flat. I think it's trivia time.
It is trivia time. Okay. The trivia question today is, tell us who is the artist that created this work of art to be left of me right here. Tell us who that artist is. It's a very well-known local Columbus artist who creates in the art studio. And we see this individual every day, and talk about somebody who's really changed the way I look at the world and how I make artwork.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you want to answer the question, all you have to do is answer it in the comment section of this feed.
So, Mehri, one thing that you were saying that I thought was kind of interesting is about how your mind goes around fast and with the ADHD. But I look at your work, and your work looks like it's slow made. I see it as what I think of as slow art. Partly because of the stitching, partly because there isn't any glue. Because to not have glue, you have to keep things together. Barbara Vogel. Congratulations, Barb. You're the winner.
Congratulations.
Another lovely Columbus artist.
If you want to know the answer, it's Charlotte McGraw. Look up her work.
Charlotte
it's
McGraw.
Beautiful.
Yes. And she has artwork throughout the city, and she is pretty special. Where was I? I was talking about how not using glue and letting the paper float upon itself is kind of keeping the layers intact like a onion skin. So they're all still, viable entities in a way. But stitching them like that takes time. And I think it's interesting that somebody who has so much energy moves into a slow form of working.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard, so as a therapist, I've learned a lot about my own ADHD through education. And one of the things that I've learned is a lot of the time people with ADHD, even when they're young, they have one thing or a couple things that they can really focus on. And for me, I didn't realize this because I wasn't aware of it. I was doodling all the time when I was in school. But I just didn't realize that that's what was helping me focus, but it was. And then when I got to college, I realized that, I was kind of a little bit older and realized like, wow, it's kind of rude to sit in a class and just draw. So I started having conversations with my teachers and saying, you know what, I've actually realized this really helps me focus. And it did. And it still does. When I started drawing and outside of just the doodling and I started like making work, I realized that I had the same calm that people had been describing to me my whole life that I was like, I don't know what that is. Like, I can't focus. I can't be calm like that. But I realized after I would draw, it was almost like I was meditating. And it's almost like I'm, drawing and making art for me has become like a meditation, like a prayer, like something that when I come out of, I feel that peace that I've only ever heard people describe. I've never felt it except when I'm making art. And I can focus and slow down in a way that is really, it's really helpful for my brain and myself, but it's also really helpful for confidence. Because if you think about, having ADHD, like people who have ADHD are often not as confident as everybody else because we have something that has like put us apart from everybody our whole lives of like, why can't you just blank? And if you have ADHD, you know what that feels like, right? So making art for me has been a way for me to really look at myself and be like, wow, I can do that. And I can do it well. And I can feel calm and really like just this lovely feeling that I never really understood, that I just heard people describe for years.
It kind of seems to me, Mehri, that your ADHD kind of gave you a superpower. And that's how you make so much artwork. And I mean, I do believe that, everybody has challenges in their life. And sometimes you can take your challenge, like I tend to be pretty obsessive. And I can either, surprise. And I can either, not be very constructive with it, or I found that I can take all of that obsessiveness and put it into my own work. And so it's kind of like turning it into, that's my superpower, my
exactly. And I think that, that's something that when I started Art Outside the Lines, we had all of our artists with disabilities who were there were also managers. So they also had roles. And one of my really big goals was take the thing that everybody else your whole life has said, this is what's wrong with you, and let's make it into a strength. So, very, very easy example. We had somebody who had pretty like textbook autism, right, with us. And she was super organized. And as you guys all know, because I just told you I have ADHD, I'm not super organized at all. And she became our supply manager. And her autism was what made her so good at it. And I guess I didn't, I realized that was something that I had done for myself with ADHD. And, what I was really good at was coming up with really big ideas to bring the community together, to work together, to do art that promotes healing and all of that. And, if you look at a group of people with disabilities or with mental health issues or any of that, like Debbie, what you just said and what I just said, it's like we can take that and we can flip it. We can turn it into the strength. We can turn it into the thing that makes you stand out, not the thing that made you stand out and have people look at you funny, but makes you stand out and have people really applaud you.
Yeah. Well, it makes you, applaud you and makes you really unique. And it also gives you the ability to share that with other people. I think that's really important for people to understand. They can take things that are challenging and do something good with it rather than, oh, I've got to get better,
Yeah. And I think like that whole idea of take a group of people or take a person or take a space or a photograph or make art about something that most people are really going to look at as like wrong. Something is wrong with you or something is wrong with this. And looking at that in a different way, looking at it in a beautiful way, I think is what's really guided my life so far. It's a big, so if any of you are watching who know about the Goodwill Art Studio mail art project, that's why we started it. Like, so tomorrow or today even, we're sending out 200 envelopes. There's one going to all of the 50 states of mail art. And the whole idea there was like, okay, coronavirus is happening. There's protests happening all over the country. There's all these really big things happening. So how do we as artists contribute to that? And so what I did was I sort of thought, okay, if I could say, you know, if Debbie and I could grab like 4 of our friends who are having a really rough time and just put them in the studio for 5 minutes, it would make it better because it's so joyful in here and funny and fun and creative. So obviously we can't do that. You know, we're not open really fully yet. So people from the community can't come in here. And so I thought, all right, well, why don't we just take all of these, like, you know, when you're in an art studio, every single piece is not hanging on a wall. You know, people are doing little drawings here and little things there, or like they made a piece that they really don't like, but there's one corner that's cool. So what we did was we took all of these little extra bits that we found in the studio and put them in envelopes.
Yeah, we have massive amounts of extra massive amounts. Yeah, that we cannot get rid of. We have to use. Yeah, and to be able to take, again, you know, it's another example of taking something that most people would throw away or see as broken or not worth it. And all right, well, you know, you receive that in the mail and you've been quarantined and shelter in place for months and you live by yourself and you don't have kids and you get this like really exciting, brightly colored thing that just, you know, pulling all these things out of this envelope. And so an envelope,
you know,
it's got lots and lots of little bits of drawings. It's got, some of them have little oddities from around the studio, but lots of colorful drawings. I would say if people are who have anybody watching that's interested, we'll send you some. We will send you something. It's been Goodwill, really fun.
It's been great. Goodwill Art Studio and Gallery on Facebook. You can just send us a message with your address or somebody else's address who you're like, man, they're kind of struggling right now, and we'll send them a little bit.
That's a really good idea. Yeah, surprise someone.
Surprise somebody.
Surprise, colorful. I mean, even the envelope is a work of art.
Yeah, a bunch of the envelopes were decorated by one of our artists, so that was super fun.
And I think that with our artists, because they are a little bit more limited in how they can interact with the community, just from not having means of travel or whatever, I think that it's really wonderful for them to feel the power of being able to just give
and reach. Know? Yeah, totally.
Actually, I've always really wanted to. I've always stressed when I talk about my work that this individuals with developmental disabilities historically have not really been viewed or understood or valued, actually, and they've been chucked into a kind of a category of people that you take care of. Yeah. But my experience of working with them and my experience of seeing volunteers come through here or anybody who interacts with the people I work with, they're inspiring and they are huge contributors to the beauty of this world. And so the mail art is just taking little tangible bits that they can then just send to people. And they love the idea of like, they don't know who's going to get it.
Right. You know? And the cool thing is we've even had people say, well, can we send art back? And I love that. I love that. Yeah. So we're going to be getting some back from people, which will be cool. I think it's going to be really, it's been super fun so far.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an ongoing dialogue with people.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always loved the idea of pen pals. Well, actually, I've always just loved the idea of going to the mailbox and having a surprise.
Right.
And with the digital age, people don't write letters. I mean, even handwriting is kind of going down the tubes. Yeah. I've been, trying to write with script, and some, my daughter's like, what's that? Looks like a scribble. But I love going back to some old school, really more intimate ways of communicating with people. And there's nothing more intimate than getting something handmade.
Yeah.
And that has your address written on it in hand. Somebody's hand wrote that. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, it's exciting. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing that you and I both share is we both worked in the same organization down in Athens. We haven't really talked about that much.
Yeah, we should talk about that.
Yeah, we very briefly overlapped working at one of the most gorgeous organizations in Ohio and in the world, I think, called
Agreed.
Passion First. And it's one of the earlier studios that was made, that was put together to work with artists with and without disabilities collaborating. And that's where I got my, I went down there to make dolls for a month through an Ohio Arts Council grant. It was like such a blast. And when my month came to a close, I begged to have a job with them because I just couldn't face not going down there. And at the time I was commuting from Columbus to Athens to work down there, much to the dismay of my husband and kids. But, and you worked there too. And
I did, yeah.
That's, I think for me, that was that was my first the first experience I had with working with individuals.
Yeah, it was. So when I got to Athens, I told my advisor, she was my adopted advisor. She wasn't even my advisor, but Rosemary Basili said to me, she was like, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to design my own major and I want to make art with people with disabilities. And this is my plan. And I was like, I don't know if people are doing that or what, but I just, and she interrupts me and she said, do you know who Patty Mitchell is? And I said, no. And I was 18. And she said, hold on. And she called her and Patty said, come and have a meeting with me. And then I arrived and realized that this place that I was just like imagining in my brain already existed. And it was something that, working there and seeing the balance of people with disabilities and people without disabilities was really just a beautiful thing for me. And because, Debbie, you're right. This field is about helping. And we often forget the contribution that people with disabilities can make. And when I saw this marriage of people with and without disabilities working together to create art, and it not being all about the person with the disability or all about the person who was just a working professional artist, and it was just really equal. I think, that's the dream. Like it's beautiful. And I think, one of the things that makes the Goodwill Art Studio stick out a lot for me, because I've been to a bunch of studios, I've worked at studios, I've set up studios. The difference here, though, is there is a maturity. There's a maturity that exists in our studio, Debbie, and it's something that I've never really seen. It's like, and it comes from you. It comes from Debbie's vision of, Debbie, just take the compliment. It comes from the vision. It comes from the vision of like, these people are artists. They are not people with disabilities who are hanging out in an art studio. These people should be paid, not paid a little bit, paid what they're worth. And that is something that I think is a constant struggle for studios that are for artists with disabilities around the country is, do we charge $25 a painting or do we charge $100 a painting? Well, it always depends. But here, I think that there's a dignity and respect that these artists have from us and from the community that is very different than other places I've been. And I'm like endlessly grateful for it because I feel like I've learned a lot. And it's really taken my art to a different level, my personal artwork, working with you and being here.
Well, thank you. I can't imagine. I can't imagine working. I can't imagine that. How did I ever work here for as long as I did without you, Mehri? You've been such a joy to share this space with and to share ideas with and constantly inspiring me. And we've also worked with some really great coworkers as well.
Yeah.
We're pretty lucky to have. I sound so hokey and so kind of gushy, but special, the really lovely people that
yeah,
every single
absolutely.
one of the lovely people that come through the art studio and that work in the art studio. I do think that that's one thing that is great about the studio is that although we have staff and we have people that are coming to get services, we don't have that hierarchy. I think we all recognize that we're in there working together, and that I certainly can learn just as much from you as you can from me. And it's not a top-down.
It's beautiful. It's a balanced.
We're all there together, and it's great fun.
It's great.
Certainly had my life go into a direction I never saw it going into before, and I thank God, it's made my world great.
Yeah, it's great work. I'm really grateful for it, and I think the way that the direction that Columbus is moving in just becoming this beautiful art city is, I mean, and it has been becoming for a while, but all the murals downtown right now, all of just everything that this city is about I grew up in Upper Arlington, so I've been here forever, but I think that we're moving in a direction that is really exciting. And I just feel very lucky that we have the artists who we do have, Debbie, that we get to work with. I mean, we've got people in our studio who have worked in the convention center. We have, they're all over the place. And that's rooted in Debbie's vision, which I think is really beautiful and amazing.
Well, it's all of our, and we've all worked together.
Right. Well, it's like, okay, there's something that needs to be painted downtown. Maybe we can get this group of kids with disabilities to do it, and we don't have to pay them, and it'll be a volunteer. Like Debbie, she's like, no, these are professional working artists. You're going to pay them this much, and it's going to be in the convention center, and it's going to be huge. And a lot of that has to do with the support that we have from the Reese Brothers as well. As a studio, we have a beautiful partnership there, and the respect that the Reese Brothers bring to these artists, I think, is really special as well. It's awesome.
I would also say, if going back to the image that Charlotte painted back there, if anybody is interested in learning more about Charlotte, if you go to she was on the Broad and High program it's a hilarious 7 minutes of learning about Charlotte. Actually, it's not all hilarious. I mean, there's some really deep, poignant things so that she has overcome great challenges in her life. I highly recommend going to YouTube and looking that up. There was also a Broad and High episode that is with our studio and also Passion Works with Patty Mitchell talking. Mm-hmm. And that talks a little bit more about our studios if anybody's interested in learning a little bit more about us. And it's a great world.
It is a great world.
Did you have any other pieces that you could show us before we?
Yeah, I've got a little bit. So one of the big things we were talking about was in the studio, we're always trying new techniques and doing things. So we've been doing some printmaking recently. I learned about deconstructed silkscreen from Cody, who we work with. So that's sort of a one. And then this is one that I did some work on top of. And just learning about alternative processes has been really fun.
The deconstructed silkscreen, Mehri, came from your predecessor at the studio, Kate Gorman.
Perfect.
Who was our fiber artist, and she did a workshop with us and taught us all how to do. And she was a resident artist here for 10 years, and taught us all how to do deconstructed silkscreen, which we've all kind of loved. I love that. Can you show it a little bit? Show it a little bit.
Yeah.
That's gorgeous.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing your work.
Thanks. We didn't announce the winner of the thing. Oh, we did? Never mind. We did. We did not. We will right now.
Did we announce?
I think it was. I can't see the comments, so I don't know who it was. But Shelby. You won. So you're going to get a gift certificate to somewhere great, and we'll make that happen.
Quincy Emporium.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, Quincy
making
Emporium.
me hungry. Yeah. Well, do you have anything else you want to chat about?
No, this is the first interview that I've ever had that's also focused on my own artwork. And that's been really cool to sort of have that going. So thank you to everybody who watched and everybody who's been supporting me forever. Thank you, Debbie, for this opportunity. Being in the studio is a really magical experience. When we open, like open, if you're in Columbus, come visit.
Yeah. We are, normally open 5 days a week, and we do try to get the workout into. Actually, we're pretty successful. I think we do a really good job.
Very good job.
Getting our workout into the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have, and then we also do Winter Fair every year, which is
a blast.
It's really blast. It's very expensive for me because then I go and I spend all my money that I should be spending on all,
Christmas
families, their gifts. Yeah. And I always leave with about $200 worth of sketchbooks. There's definitely my favorite booths there. But yeah, so I would say come and look for us, but follow us on Facebook as well, and you'll see some more of the artwork that we have. We do have exceptional people here. I should mention that this piece right here, which is also one of our very talented artists who also has a piece hanging in the convention center. He also has, it's a collaborative piece that he has. This is Tony Hoover, and he has been making artwork for well over going on 40 years. When we've argued back and forth, because then of course you're talking about how old are you? But
right.
he's made art for all of his adult life, and he's a remarkable human being. And one of his pieces that is a collaborative piece with another artist it's in the convention center, is also translated into tile in I think in the Vine Street parking garage, and it's pretty hilarious. It's one that has overweight superheroes floating through the sky, and Tony's buildings are underneath, and it's titled "Duty Before Donuts," because the superheroes were done by one of our artists that does these hilarious drawings of old school cartoon people, and yeah, they all look a bit like they've been around the block and probably eaten too many too many Twinkies and pizza and donuts. If people who are watching, if you go to the convention center, there's so much great artwork there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have another artist also who has artwork there, but just being part of that collection is pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I think we need to wrap up. Thank you guys, everybody, for tuning in, and there's more to come.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mehri.
Bye.
Bye-bye.